In the soft amber light of the funeral chapel, Patricia rises from the front pew and walks to the podium. A leather folder pressed against her black dress.
Before we conclude, I must honor Grandma's final wishes. The revised will she signed only weeks before her passing.
Margaret does not flinch. Her hands rest lightly on the closed folder in her lap, a faint half smile on her lips.
To my granddaughter Margaret, I leave nothing. She abandoned this family, and I see her true nature now.
An elderly couple in the front pew nod slowly, their faces heavy with pity and agreement. Murmurs ripple through the gathering.
Let them believe it. They will learn the truth soon enough.
Everything passes to me, as the daughter who never left her side. This is Grandma's justice.
Margaret's expression doesn't break. She folds her hands atop the folder, her red lipstick the only color in the dim light. Patricia steps down, her heels clicking on the marble, and returns to her seat with a satisfied glance toward Margaret.
She never saw the trust I hold.
3 years earlier, in Eleanor's sunlit living room, attorney Richard Caldwell spread a thick document across the oak desk.
This living trust will bypass probate entirely. No one can challenge it if it's done right.
Once funded, the assets belong to the trust. You'll name a trustee to manage everything.
I am naming Margaret. She's the only one who ever asked what I needed, not what I owned.
Richard handed Eleanor the pen. She signed with a steady hand. Within weeks, the house on Elm Street, the savings accounts, the lake land, every asset was moved into the trust. Margaret was called to Richard's office, where the weight of the documents was explained in careful, legal terms.
As trustee, you'll have full authority. Your sister won't have access, and she won't know unless you tell her.
Later, in Eleanor's living room, Margaret sat across from her grandmother, the signed trust document between them.
She'll never know the weight of what I've just accepted. But she deserves this peace.
Patricia stood in Eleanor's kitchen, listing forms on the counter, phone in hand.
Yes, I have power of attorney. The house will be listed by Monday.
Eleanor walked in as Patricia hung up, her face paling at the sight of the forms.
What are these? Who told you that you could sell my home?
Patricia's excuses meant nothing. Eleanor saw the truth. Patricia had tried to steal her home. That evening, Eleanor called Richard. They set up a camcorder in the study.
I want this on record. My daughter Patricia tried to sell my home for her own gain.
Eleanor recorded her final message, the red light blinking. Her words would carry a weight Patricia could never imagine. She died 3 weeks later, with Margaret at her bedside.
So that's why Patricia never knew. Her entire claim is built on a lie.
The service folded into a low murmur of condolences, and the relatives began to stir, their whispers carrying toward Margaret like cold wind.
Aunt Caroline, you saw how she didn't even defend herself. Guilt written all over that frozen face.
The aunt glanced at Margaret and pressed her lips into a thin line, nodding.
Go ahead. Let every whisper build the stage.
Another relative, an older man, shook his head as he passed her pew. Margaret felt the weight, but she only smoothed the edge of the folder. Across the aisle, Richard met her eyes. His head dipped once, steady, unhurried.
Not yet.
Patricia drifted toward the front again, patting her folder with the air of someone who had already won.
She's holding a dead piece of paper and doesn't even know it.
1 month before the funeral, Margaret sat across from Richard in his law office. The air was thick with strategy.
Patricia has been calling relatives. She's already painting you as the daughter who vanished.
Let her build her case. The higher she climbs, the harder she falls.
They planned the funeral reveal. Richard would be present with the trust documents and the video, waiting for the right moment.
She's been flashing an old will around. It's worthless, but it's buying her sympathy.
Good. Let her think she's won. I'll make sure the whole family sees the truth.
Later that week, Patricia arrived at Margaret's doorstep unannounced, all smiles and false concern.
I just want us to be sisters again. Can we talk about Grandma's estate without lawyers?
There's nothing to discuss, Patricia. The will speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Patricia left satisfied, convinced Margaret knew nothing of the trust, her grip on that old will tighter than ever. The morning of the funeral, a cold drizzle clung to the chapel parking lot as relatives filed inside.
Margaret couldn't even bother to say goodbye properly. I was the only one there at the end. She stopped visiting months ago. Grandma died alone, you know?
Margaret arrived early, clutching her folder, and saw Patricia working the crowd like a politician.
She's poisoning every memory of me, and they're swallowing it whole.
She walked past a small group, catching the end of another whisper. She only cared about the money. Her fingers tightened on the folder, knuckles white against the manila.
Grandma's voice echoed in her mind. Let them talk. The truth will speak for itself.
She adjusted her blazer and walked to a back pew, alone, the folder a quiet anchor against her side. The service would begin soon, and Patricia's stage was set. But so was Margaret's. The organ stilled, and the chapel fell silent as the officiant spoke of Eleanor's enduring love and quiet strength. An aunt shared a tearful memory of Eleanor's garden, but Margaret heard none of it.
Richard's assurance echoed. She filed that old will. It means nothing.
She caught Richard's steady gaze across the aisle. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. Then the officiant's voice rose. Now, Patricia will read the last wishes of Eleanor.
Thank you all. It was Grandma's dying request that I read this revised will.
Patricia walked to the podium, her heels echoing, the embossed folder pressed to her chest.
This is the moment she's been waiting for. So am I.
She opened the folder with deliberate slowness, drawing the page out until it caught the light. The room held its breath. Beneath her blazer, Margaret's fingers pressed against the hidden trust. Patricia's voice sliced through the silence, each sentence weighted with calculated drama, every pause a blade aimed at Margaret.
I, Eleanor Townsend, being of sound mind, revoke all prior wills and codicils. This is my final testament.
The relatives leaned in, their faces a study in sympathy that clung to Patricia like a shroud.
To my granddaughter, Margaret, nothing. She abandoned this family, and I see her true nature.
Not yet. Let her have every word, every accusation. She's building her own gallows.
My house, my land, my savings, all of it passes to Patricia, the daughter who never abandoned me.
A ripple of whispers passed through the chapel, heads turning toward Margaret with pity or quiet judgment. Patricia folded the paper with a snap, then fixed the room with a triumphant stare. Margaret rose, the folder a steady anchor in her hands, her half-smile holding secrets no one yet understood.
Now, Patricia, you never knew about the trust.
What trust? There is no trust. You are making a spectacle.
3 years ago, Eleanor established a living trust. She moved every asset into it, the house, the accounts, the lake land.
Gasps rippled through the pews. Relatives turned to one another, their confusion evident.
That's impossible. I have her final will right here. She would have told me.
She didn't tell you because she caught you trying to sell her home. The trust supersedes any will.
Patricia's knuckles whitened against the wooden podium, her composure fracturing. The relatives' whispers grew louder, some shaking their heads.
The paper you hold controls nothing. I am the sole trustee of Eleanor's estate.
A heavy silence fell, broken only by Patricia's shallow, angry breaths. Margaret opened the folder and withdrew the thick trust document, its header bold and unmistakable under the dim chapel light.
This is the Eleanor Townsend Living Trust, signed and notarized 3 years ago. It is legal, binding, and irrevocable.
Richard rose from his pew, briefcase in hand, and walked to the front with the measured gait of a man who knew the law.
I am Richard Caldwell, attorney for the family trust. I can verify every signature and notary seal.
Relatives leaned forward, their earlier sympathy crumbling into wary curiosity.
This is a forgery. She manipulated a sick old woman. That document won't hold up.
A living trust supersedes any will. This is state law. That paper you are holding controls nothing.
The relatives' murmurs sharpened into disbelief, their eyes darting from Patricia to the trust.
The room is turning, but the video will seal the tomb she built for herself.
Patricia's hand loosened, the old will slipping from her fingers to the cold chapel floor. Patricia's voice trembled into a broken sob. The woman who had stood triumphant moments ago suddenly looked fragile and wronged.
She turned my own mother against me. She whispered lies into a dying woman's ear until she signed away her own heart.
An elderly aunt dabbed at her eyes, her pity now torn between two sisters.
Ask yourselves who was here, who drove her to appointments, who held her hand at night. Not Margaret. Never Margaret.
She's building a new lie from old memories, and they are listening. I have the truth, but the cost of playing it feels like fire in my chest.
Margaret, the records speak for themselves. But the living also need to hear a voice they cannot deny.
Grandma wanted me to have everything. This trust is a trick, a cruel joke by a bitter woman who could never stand that mother loved me more.
Heads turned back toward Margaret, but now with something harder than pity, uncertainty, and the faint seed of doubt.
Words aren't enough. Not against tears. I have to show them the woman they truly mourn.
Patricia's tears flowed freely now, more performance than grief, but the room was swaying.
Grandma once told me the truth will set you free, but it will also burn everything it touches. If I stay silent, she rewrites history. I can't let her poison Eleanor's memory into a weapon. Grandma left a message, a recording made before she died to explain the trust herself.
What message? You are going to parade a delusional recording at her funeral? This is a circus.
Richard, please.
Richard opened his briefcase and withdrew a tablet. The room shifted, a collective intake of breath. The screen glowed with a frozen image of Eleanor, her expression both kind and unyielding. Patricia's knuckles whitened on the podium, a tremor running through her grip. Margaret's thumb rested beside the play button, her pulse a steady drum in the silence.
Don't you dare play that. It's not her. It's a manipulated script. Stop this before you ruin what little family we have left.
Richard connected the tablet to a small portable speaker and stepped back, his expression grave.
You are desecrating her funeral. This is nothing but a theatrical stunt to steal what's mine.
A gruff voice from a back pew silenced her. Sit down, Patricia. We all loved Eleanor. If she has something to say, we will hear it.
Forgive me, Grandma, for what this will do. But you wanted the truth told.
Margaret's thumb pressed down, and the video began to play. Eleanor appeared on the screen, pearls catching the light, her voice steady and clear.
My name is Eleanor Townsend. I am of sound mind, and I am recording this to ensure there is no confusion about my intentions.
The chapel fell, utterly silent. Not a breath stirred. Patricia's hands dropped to her sides, her chest barely moving. Eleanor leaned slightly forward, as if she could see through the lens into the very room. Eleanor's voice filled the chapel, each word landing with the weight of a gavel.
I discovered my daughter Patricia had contacted a real estate agent. She planned to list my home without my knowledge or consent.
Patricia's face drained of color, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came.
That is why I created the Living Trust, to protect my estate from her greed and ensure it passes to someone I trust.
A collective gasp rose from the pews. An uncle muttered, "She tried to sell her own mother's house?"
I leave my entire estate to my granddaughter Margaret, who has always been faithful.
Margaret watched, a single tear tracing down her cheek, but her composure held.
And to Patricia, because you tried to take what was not yours, I leave you precisely $1.
The video ended. The screen went black, reflecting only the stunned faces of the congregation.
It's done. Now they know the truth. Now she answers for every lie.
Patricia's mouth opened, then closed. She raised a trembling hand toward the cold screen.
None of that was real. She was manipulated. You all know she wasn't herself those last months.
But the relatives were already turning away, their faces hardening into a collective wall of disbelief. An uncle shook his head. From the back, a gruff voice cut through the murmur, flat and final.
There is no satisfaction in this, only a hollow ache where vindication should be.
Richard stepped forward and placed the trust folder back into Margaret's hands, his nod one of finality. She opened the folder to the final clause, the paper worn from months of quiet waiting. Margaret's finger traced the handwritten line Eleanor had added in her own steady script.
This is the last piece. Grandmother's final word, written in anger, but sealed in love.
Patricia's eyes fell to the page, and the last fragile color drained from her face. Richard opened his hand, revealing a crisp $1 bill that he had carried for this exact moment. Margaret took the bill with steady fingers and walked to the podium where Patricia's worthless will still lay. She placed the dollar on top of the printed lie, its green edge stark against the black folder.
Grandma left you this. $1. And a line she wrote herself.
She read from the trust document, her voice carrying the weight of Eleanor's own hand.
For Patricia, who tried to sell my home while I was alive, $1.
Patricia stared at the dollar as if it were a venomous thing. Her breath stopped in her throat. The relatives rose in hushed waves, their faces stamped with the same silent judgment.
This is not victory. It's the sealing of a wound that began before any of us understood.
The dollar lay still as stone on the podium, a debt forever unpaid and now forever documented. The first relative stood, an elderly aunt, her wooden pew creaking, and walked past Patricia without a glance. One by one, the others followed, their footsteps echoing in the hollowing chapel.
Wait, where are you going? You can't just leave. I am the victim here.
A cousin approached Margaret, pressing her hand briefly. "I am sorry," she whispered, "for everything."
These apologies are for Eleanor, not for me. Still, they are balm on a very old burn.
Margaret nodded at each murmured regret, accepting with the quiet grace her grandmother had taught her.
It's all her. She twisted everything. Why won't any of you just listen to me?
Her voice splintered into a sob, but no one turned back. The last relative paused at the door, then let it swing shut. The chapel fell into a dense final silence. Patricia was left alone at the front, clutching the podium's edge.
She is alone now, as she made me. The circle is closed.
A handful of relatives hovered near the door, uncertain, as Margaret turned to face Richard and the few who remained.
To the grandchildren of this family, Eleanor's legacy will live on.
She opened the trust folder once more, pointing to a provision her grandmother had insisted on.
Every grandchild's education will be funded directly from this trust. No tuition, no debt. That was her dream.
A tearful nod came from the cousin who had apologized. Richard stepped forward to verify the clause.
You can't just give away my money.
No one looked at her. Margaret continued, as if the interruption had been a draft from a closing door. Richard collected the defunct will and the dollar, tucking them into his briefcase with the efficiency of a man closing a file forever.
Eleanor's line echoed. Take care of it. It took care of you first.
Margaret closed the folder and nodded to Richard. The matter was settled, the trust fulfilled. Margaret walked past her sister, not sparing a glance, the folder tucked securely under her arm. She pushed open the heavy chapel doors and stepped into the blinding afternoon sun. Richard appeared beside her, his briefcase bumping his knee.
It's done. She won't contest it. The recording made sure of that.
Margaret nodded, pulling a steady breath. The iron band around her ribs loosened.
She thought of Eleanor's voice, the promise whispered from a hospital bed.
The burden she had carried for 3 years quietly lifted. She looked back at the chapel, its stained glass darkening in the afternoon light. Then she walked to her car, the folder on the passenger seat, a quiet companion. As the engine turned, the weight that replaced the burden was the piece of a promise kept. The lake house waited as Eleanor had left it, the porch sagging, the windows dark. Beside the shed, the for sale sign Patricia had planted lay in the dirt, splintered and forgotten. Margaret picked it up and tossed it into the shed, where it landed with a hollow clatter. She walked to the dock, the planks familiar under her feet, and looked out over the water.
This is what Eleanor wanted protected. Not just the title, but the silence.
At sunset, she sat on the porch, the trust folder resting in her lap.
The trust was never a weapon. It was a compass, pointing home.
She opened it, tracing Eleanor's signature, the ink holding 3 years of secrets. The lake glowed copper, and she breathed in the peace, finally whole. This was hers, as Eleanor intended, a silence that was full, not empty. Weeks later, the lake house filled with laughter. Grandchildren raced across the lawn, their shouts echoing Eleanor's stories. Margaret watched from the porch, a cup of coffee cooling beside the trust folder. On the kitchen table, 3 college acceptance letters lay beside a thank you card, signed by all of them. The trust had funded their tuition, exactly as Eleanor had wished. That afternoon, Margaret found a small velvet box. Inside lay Eleanor's pearls and a handwritten note.
To Margaret, who kept her promise.
She clasped the pearls around her neck, the cool weight of familiar embrace. She stood before the window, the matriarch Eleanor had trusted her to become.
She had not only kept the promise, she had become it.
The trust folder rested on the table, closed but never forgotten. The summer evenings grew long at the lake, the sunsets painting the water in old gold. Margaret sat on the porch, the trust folder resting on the arm of her chair like an old friend.
Eleanor's voice surfaced again, soft and certain. Take care of it. It took care of you first.
Her fingers brushed the worn cover. The texture, a quiet reminder of 3 years of waiting. Out on the dock, a heron stood motionless, patient as the truth itself.
She had kept the promise. Not just the legal one, but the one made in the quiet of a hospital room.
The sky deepened into amber and rose, and the lake caught every shade.
A serene, knowing half-smile curved her lips, the look of someone who had already won.
She leaned back, the pearls cool against her skin, the silence around her full and complete. And as the last light slipped beneath the pines, the screen faded to black.